girls with their nails done now. Girls with their nails done. Girls with their nails done.
All right. How's everybody doing tonight on this Tuesday, February 11, 2025? My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. I hope everybody's doing okay. Yeah, that song kind of fire, isn't it? Get you going for sure. Anyway, just thought I'd hop on here and do a case that I was looking at earlier. And it really intrigued me. It really did. I guess I'm going to have to change my name to Shabusiness with all these crazy cases that I've been looking up lately. I mean, for real, bro. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to let you make up your mind about this. Anyways, before I begin, how's everybody doing? I hope you guys are not getting a lot of snow. It's kind of 30-something degrees here with slight drizzle. I don't know how it is in your neck of the woods, but let me go ahead and begin with this. How many of y'all think I should change my last name to Shabusiness? Wow, 12 Shabusiness. Mind your Shabusiness. Mind your Shabusiness. Mind your Shabusiness. Anyways, I want y'all to watch this because this is kind of, man, I watched this earlier and I was like, what the hell? But anyways, here we go.
Never fought. She never did. And next thing you know, she's dead. And I'm like, huh, this is great. And I guess I got scared or nervous or I don't know. It was juicy. It didn't taste like blood, though. I mean, it tasted like a charboard piece of steak.
She really wasn't sure what she was dead. Why didn't you call somebody to come up there and check on her?
Because something else is in control.
When detectives in Coffee County, Tennessee were called out to a remote property late one summer evening to respond to a peculiar claim, they had no idea what they would soon uncover would reveal a horrific and gruesome crime. In a chilling turn of events, detectives were left to puzzle out not only if someone had committed the crime, but if they'd resorted to cannibalism following a bizarre accident, or if in fact the stomach-churning act had been the fulfillment of a fantasy and an unhealthy obsession with serial killers. On the evening of June 8, 2014, Jason Walker was walking across the yard of his rural Tennessee.
Let me ask you a question before I begin this. Do you believe that art depicts reality after, like what he just said, an unhealthy obsession with serial killers? Do you really believe that the more you study or the more that you learn about serial killers, the more you're apt to become one? That's a question for the chat. Y'all let me know what you think.
Home when he heard a voice call his name from somewhere in the yard. Jason turned, slightly impatient. It was 6:30 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon, and he was eager to get on with his preparations for the upcoming week. Looking to the adjacent yard, he saw his 37-year-old neighbor, Gregory Scott Hale, standing at the fence and motioning for him to come closer. Jason sighs inwardly but approaches the short chain-link fence separating them anyway, having no idea that the conversation he was about to have would be one of the most horrifying of his life. "Where's your backhoe?" Scott says by way of greeting. Jason replies that it isn't there, and he won't have it back for a few days. Scott appears somewhat irritated by Jason's response, prompting him to ask why Scott is suddenly so interested in his backhoe. Scott, in response, makes a tasteless and gruesome joke about needing it to hide the evidence. Jason, nonplussed, stares at him in silence, prompting Scott to continue by pointing to the 2 5-gallon buckets sitting just a few feet away, near Scott's burn pit.
You little crime sleuths, you. What do you think's in those buckets?
He explains that he tried burning everything in the burn pit, but it hadn't worked, so he figures he should just bury it all as fast as possible. Jason listens to this reasoning for the use of his backhoe before growing tired of his weird neighbor's stupid joke, and abruptly telling Scott he needs to go and that he'll talk to him later. 3 hours later at 9:30 p.m., Sheriff's Corporal Brad Roberts is sitting at the front desk of the Coffee County Sheriff's Department when a man approaches, tense and anxious to speak with someone immediately. Corporal Roberts tells him to come back first thing tomorrow morning, but the man is insistent. It's Jason Walker, and he needs the police to listen to the joke his neighbor has just told him, because the longer he's thought about it, the less it started feeling like a joke. At first, the corporal is skeptical, as it sounds ridiculous. Violent crime is almost unheard of in tiny Coffee County. But Jason is so adamant, so sure, that the deputy starts getting a sick feeling as well. He radios for 2 more officers, Deputy Rainey and criminal investigator Dendy, to accompany Jason back to his home to check out the story. Upon arriving at Jason's property, investigators made sure to come in through the back, driving without headlights so as not to alert anyone in the Scott household.
We're glad you're here, Melissa. Thank you for being here. You know this guy, the narrator? I like his voice. Anybody else like that raspy kind of voice on these crime shows? I think it's pretty cool.
Jason and the 2 officers walk through the darkness, shining their flashlights through the chain-link fence to illuminate the 2 5-gallon buckets, their bright white plastic almost glowing in the dim light. C.I. Dendy picks up a garden hoe lying in Jason's grass and uses it to reach over the fence and snag the handle of the closest bucket, lifting it over to their side. Grasping the lid, he peels it off to reveal the ghastly contents, causing all 3 men to reel back in horror. It's a woman's severed head and hand. 3 days earlier, on July 6th, CCTV footage at Oak Liquor shows a woman entering the store at around 3:30, striding in confidently and heading to the back of the store before stopping and looking around hesitantly. This is Lisa Marie Hyder, and unbeknownst to everyone in the store, this is her last day alive. She scans the back shelves, curling her long auburn ponytail around her fingers and adjusting her large black sunglasses before walking up to the man who has just passed her in the aisle. She isn't from here. She's only traveled up from where she lives in Dunlap, Tennessee to spend time with her ex-husband and 2 young children.
You know what's weird? It's like when I look at some of these stories and the women are victims of a man, it makes you wonder how many times you're in the store and you're taking care of your business, but how many men are in there possibly lurking for a victim? That is some intense stuff. Not saying that it happens all the time, but you never know, right?
The youngest of which is only a year old. Just before entering the store, Lisa had been on the phone with her ex-husband, trying to get a ride from where she was to the house, but he was unloading a truck in Huntsville and couldn't get to her until he was finished. Lisa was stuck where she was, and she needed a ride, which is why police suspect she approached the man in the liquor store. As for why she chose the liquor store, according to her ex-husband, Lisa had been allegedly struggling recently with alcoholism, which is why they'd split up a few months earlier. Though she had struggled with a dependency to alcohol before, a recent devastating piece of news had kicked her problems into overdrive. Lisa had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer and had only been given 6 months to live. Lisa was reportedly beyond devastated by the news, drinking to cope and apparently end her life faster, spiraling emotionally and behaving more recklessly than she usually did. As she's talking to both the man and the cashier, she adjusts her sunglasses and for a brief moment, a black right eye is visible. How she received this particular injury is still unknown, but it would pale in comparison to the injuries she would receive later that night, because the man she's speaking to and will eventually exit the liquor store with is Gregory Scott Hale. Back in Jason's yard, C.I. Dendy and Deputy Rainey are radioing for backup, ordering for crime scene units to be deployed immediately and for search warrants to be written. As backup arrives, they head into the Scott residence to place Gregory Scott Hale under arrest, finding him sleeping on a couch in one of the filthy garages. Given what they've just discovered in the white buckets, the detectives were no doubt disturbed by the items Scott has decided to use to decorate this space. These items were later discovered to be old Halloween props from a haunted attraction Scott had worked the previous year. Scott makes no attempt to resist, and when initially confronted, admits to being the one who killed the woman and had placed her limbs and head in the 2 buckets, and had buried the rest of her in the burn pit nearby. Police take him in, and the following audio is the never-before-heard interview from that night. It has been analyzed by a licensed professional counselor.
Scott, you were talking to James out there at your house a minute ago, and he advised you of your rights. Okay. I'm Chad Parton. I don't know if you remember me or not. I worked with your mom up here for many, many years.
Chad Parton working with Scott's mother would almost certainly imply she'd worked as a member of law enforcement. But while Scott's mother, father, and son all being mere feet away asleep in the house while Scott committed this murder, none of their statements or information have ever been released.
Anyway, I'm going to go over your rights again this time since we're up here in the office, okay? If you decide to answer any questions now without a lawyer present, you still have the right to stop answering at any time. You also have the right to stop answering at any time until you talk with a lawyer, okay? This isn't a mission, and it's just that we advised you of your rights, okay? It's right there, Scott.
Unless it's over.
Well, I know you getting into some details there. You kind of skipped ahead pretty good bit. How'd you meet this girl?
She came up to me at the liquor store and said, can I go home with you?
Here in town?
Yeah, at Oak.
What day was this?
Friday.
Is this the girl that you brought in to the house? I mean, your mom and dad saw her? Okay.
The home detectives are referring to would be that of Scott's mother and father, as 37-year-old Scott had lost his job sometime prior and moved himself and his 14-year-old son into his parents' house. According to a narcissistic narrative spun by Scott, which he repeatedly mentions and embellishes throughout the interview, Lisa had apparently immediately found him so attractive that day. She immediately begged him to take her to his home and had decided she wanted to live with him in his mom's house before they had.
Y'all listen to some of the stuff that he's saying, because, I mean, I want to ask you if it makes sense or if it doesn't make sense, because he's telling the police that she came on to him and that she wanted to go home with him and that she wanted to live with him even before they left the liquor store. You tell me, based on your sleuth mentality, what do you think about that? Do you think he's telling the truth?
Had even left the liquor store. Then, once reaching the house and sitting in the grimy garage where Scott kept all of his Halloween decorations, she apparently couldn't keep her clothes on, and Scott had to repeatedly ask her to put her shirt back on because his parents might return from picking up his son at any minute. Considering Lisa was only in Manchester that day to meet with her children, whom, according to those who knew her, she adored more than life itself, it seems far more likely she simply asked Scott for a ride, and the rest of this story is a fabrication, though it's likely we'll never know for sure.
Made what I was drinking on, and she got her a pint of 100 proof vodka, and, you come hang out with me. And then she got in her head that she could just move in, and Mom ain't gonna let that happen, We did have, it was consensual, and she wanted to be choked. And, you know, us being drunk. And
Was this Friday night or was this
Friday night, it got
That's why I was kind of joking at the beginning about changing my last name to Shabiznes, because if you listen to her case, that choking thing seemed to be a prevalent thing. So he's saying that she liked to be choked after they had sex. After they had sex. Okay, so how much sense does that make?
carried away, and I guess I strangled her in
Where was y'all at when this happened?
my garage.
Was you using a rope or
Hands in a shirt. The shirt's in the garbage can in the garage.
rope?
At this point in the interview, Scott once again begins boasting about how into him Lisa was, describing in explicit detail how much she wanted him, how turned on she was by his tattoos, not once mentioning his thoughts or feelings concerning her. It's unclear why Scott is so desperate to convince the detectives that Lisa was interested in him that he's making up unconvincing details. He may be trying to make sure he isn't on the hook for assault, or it's just the narcissistic side of his personality coming through. Either way, detectives just keep trying their best to keep him on track.
So you just show me how you done that. You just
And then I got off. And then I got off. I guess she didn't. She's like, keep choking me, and I kept on. I put a shirt around her neck and tightened it up. And, you know, she's supposed to, you know, when it was, you know, and she never fought. She never did. And
I'm not laughing at the situation. I mean, I sometimes do that when I'm uncomfortable a little bit. I've never noticed that before, but somebody mentioned that to me. I'm not laughing at the situation or the death of the individual. It is merely hard to believe that he didn't know, okay, enough is enough, you know? He said he got his, and then he took the shirt and was choking her even more, but she never tapped out. And Salty, yeah, you're right. I guess there is no safe word. Never got to the safe word part. And the next thing you know, she's dead, he's saying.
And next thing you know, she's dead. And I'm like, well, this is great. And I guess, I don't know, I got scared or nervous or I don't know.
Scott's account of strangulation is interesting because, according to the autopsy, the soft tissue of the neck above the fourth cervical vertebrae are examined. No soft tissue hemorrhage is seen. The hyoid bone and thyroid cartilage are intact. No contusions of the neck are seen. While the autopsy does conclusively rule that Lisa's death was caused by homicidal violence, no single cause is listed. There were no drugs other than alcohol in her system, and her lungs showed no evidence of smoke inhalation. So exactly how Scott ended her life or why he would feel the need to lie about the exact manner of her death is unknown.
What happened after that, Scott? I mean, you realized that she had passed. Did you try to give her CPR or anything? Did you try to resuscitate her or anything?
No, I don't know how to do CPR.
Okay.
You know, I smacked her on the face a few times and,
No response.
you know, I opened up her eyes and her eyes were not all the way shut.
Yeah.
I pulled up her eyelid and covered, you know, and then moved it. Her pupil didn't dilate or move or nothing. I've been wanting to go into a psychiatric hospital because I've already been having urges, and they've just been getting greater and greater. And I don't know if it's what, but I guess before I could get to one. So I've been watching a lot of serial killer stuff. I don't know if that was getting in my head. I've been having some crazy things happening at the house, like as far as unexplainable, supernatural, whatever. I suffer from sleep paralysis, not sleep apnea, but paralysis. I'll come to.
You know, I can relate to what he's saying about the sleep paralysis because I think when I'm stressed out, and if y'all have ever experienced that, you know what I'm talking about. It's like, I think when I'm stressed out or I'm overtired or something, sometimes I wake up and I'm standing straight up, but I'm asleep and I wake up and I'm like, what the hell am I doing standing up? Like it just, or I'll wake up in bed and I can't move. I guess there's a difference between night terrors and sleep paralysis. So I'm thinking about night terrors, the ones where I jump up and I'm like, what the hell's going on? I don't know if it's because I stopped breathing or whatever. But anyways, I get what he's saying here, but listen to what he says after this. This is it's a little weird.
Completely paralyzed and I can't move.
Despite Scott's best efforts to make himself seem troubled or possibly insane, what he's describing isn't a disorder, as it happens to people fairly regularly.
But you're conscious.
Yeah, and not this last time it happened, but the time before. Because I looked it up on the internet and I found out a lot of people that's claimed to be abducted by aliens suffer from it. I've also looked up it was a demon. And, you know, anybody who knows my reputation knows I'm into the dark stuff. Ever this last time, not this last time, time before it happened, I come to, it was a deep paralysis. And I could hear something above me breathing. And something slid my fan. The way I was laying on the bed, something slid my fan all the way over, like where I look over laying down. Fan stayed running, and that's impossible. That cord's barely long enough to plug in where it was.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since then, I've had a headache constant. It's been about 2.5 months, and a beeping sound for about 2 weeks. I had an episode, give or take, a week ago, and the beeping sound's back in my head. And it's just ever since then, it's just my thoughts ain't been right.
Yeah.
How long have you been out of rehab?
This question, posed by Detective Sherrill, seemingly comes out of nowhere and isn't mentioned at any point in the interview before or after now. Since both of the detectives seem to know Scott from before this crime, it might just be prior knowledge.
I left it. I didn't even stay 24 hours because
How long ago was it been when you went there?
about 2 Februarys ago.
You ain't used any meth in the past couple of months or nothing like that?
Mm-mm.
No pills?
I took an Adderall
When did you take it?
maybe a week ago.
Pretty much all you've been doing is drinking, man.
Drinking, smoking weed. I like to do Percocets and hydros, but I don't take those to get high on them. I've abused my body so much, I hurt.
So once you realize that and she's there and you're like, okay, how long did you sit and think? Or
Did you call anybody, tell your parents? Or
Mm-mm.
so what happened from there?
I covered her up with a blanket on my love seat. You know, I'm pondering what to do, which I should have just called y'all. But another part of me was wanting, was like, you don't went this far, And that's when I pulled her off the love seat and I put her underneath the boat. Kind of threw some stuff on top of her. So in case mom or dad walked out there and looked to
Right.
see if she was there, because, I walked in and told mom, I was like, well, she's gone. She got mad because I wouldn't stand up to you and let her stand here, and she just took off walking. I waited till they went to sleep, and I guess I just let my twisted side take over. I do have personality issues.
It's unknown what Scott's official diagnoses are, but given his potential parasitic lifestyle and the seeming lack of emotion here, it would be tempting to guess that he has a form of antisocial personality disorder. However, without knowing his full history, it's hard to be certain.
After they went to sleep, I pulled her out from underneath the boat, and I gazed on her for a minute. I laid down beside her and was just touching.
Mm-hmm. Was she still warm?
She was starting to lose it, and I forgot what the word is when the blood settles.
Rigor?
No, that's
Pulling.
stiffening.
Pulling?
Yeah, and there's already, splotches. And she was starting to get a little rigor mortis, but not too bad. Her arms, they still kind of, when I drug her out, because I grabbed her by her ankles, and her arms still kind of, but her legs was a little stiff. In my head, I was thinking maybe she's just faking. There's still a part of me that was hoping.
maybe she just passed out or something?
Yeah. There's another knife in the garage. It's about this long, gray blade. Got a machete handle with duct tape on it. And I worked at a slaughterhouse for 6. Any deer hunter,
Mm-hmm.
how to feel the joints. And
This
This is creepy. Like, he said he worked in the slaughter, and what the police are about to say is going to kind of go with what I'm saying right now, because I watched this earlier, so I know what he's going to say. But I wouldn't know how to decapitate a body or to, where to cut the joints or where to. It's just terrible to think about. And I was Taylor's business last night, and she was getting off on it. You know, I think he didn't get off on it after he killed her, but the other one is just horrific, and they're both one and the same. If you ask me, if you decapitate somebody, that means that you planned on doing this. It's not one of the things that you are going to be like, well, I didn't know what I was going to do. I freaked out, blah, blah. No, you knew what you were going to do. You were going to chop her up.
This is an interesting justification he tries to make several times throughout the interview, trying to downplay his actions as a totally normal thing any deer hunter or slaughterhouse employee would be able to do, as though there are many people in these fields that would even think of doing something this horrendous. In reality, very few people, regardless of their profession or skill in butchering animals, would even know where to begin when faced with the task of applying their skills to the body of a fellow human being.
That was taking too long, but I did. I started with her head. I cut her head off first.
Did you put any plastic or anything down, or you just left her out there on the floor?
No, that floor was covered with blood.
You moved the carpet out of there. I think there's green carpet or.
And there's some blue carpet in there. I was going to pull it up, and my knife wasn't sharp enough
The pocket knife I got off the.
to do what I was wanting to do quickly. So I got the axe, cut off her hands, or at least I busted the bone with the axe. And then I used the knife and I cut off her feet.
Bear in mind that up to this point, Scott has maintained that he had a woman die in his home accidentally, and panicking went about disposing of the body in the quickest way he knew how. This next part, however, reveals the true depth of his depravity and is one of the most sickening and disgusting confessions we've ever heard.
And I was going to eat some of her, so I kind of cut off some of her, rump and part of her back strap.
Backstrap is a term used by hunters to describe the long strip of muscle that runs parallel to the animal's spine, and is a particularly prized cut of meat and big game for being the most tender and flavorful, because it isn't a muscle often used by four-legged animals. Because human beings are not four-legged game animals and therefore cannot be split into similar cuts, there's no telling what Scott actually tried hacking out of Lisa's body. But just the fact he thought of doing this at all and goes on to use these terms to describe her body shows how little regard he holds for her and the life he took. Detectives are understandably thrown by this.
Did you cut her back strap out?
Part of it.
Part of it. Did you keep any of it?
It's all in those buckets.
This is interesting because, according to the autopsy, only the lower arms, legs, hands, feet, and head were present in the buckets when collected by police. No back strap was found, though again, what exactly Scott is referring to is unknown. But his words flow too smoothly here compared to his other lies, so it seems that regardless of what he managed to actually do, he viewed Lisa as little more than an animal.
Scott is so damn calm when he's saying all this. Like, yeah, I cut up her back strap. I cut off her part of her rump. It's going to eat her. What?
To be slaughtered. He went out of his way to cut out what he thought would be the tastiest portions of her.
The body's underneath the fire pit.
What about the legs? Are they in the buckets or in the fire pit?
Both.
You got a refrigerator or anything up there in your garage? Any piece of anything in there?
No. Now I flipped her over and I cut up her belly and reached up and cut her heart out.
What'd you do with it?
I slung it.
Is it out in the yard somewhere?
Did you sling it straight from the garage or to the left?
No, it was like-
left field?
Like where those buckets are, there's a fence.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just, because Mom was coming out, and
Yeah.
So you just sort of slung it across the driveway?
she kept saying, but Mom and Dad was noticing them talking about what's Clyde keep smelling, what's Clyde keep smelling.
Clyde seems to be the family dog, though this isn't confirmed.
And this was Friday night?
And this was today. And I went and built a fire and I tried to burn her remains. And I was going to bury the head and the other body parts.
So the pieces that you cut, the back strap and whatnot, you went ahead and burnt them, or are they in a bucket too?
They're in the bucket.
They're in the buckets. But you never did fry any of her up or cook any of her or nothing or eat. Did you ever eat any of it?
Yeah.
You did. What part did you eat
Piece of meat off the leg that while she was in the fire.
while it was cooking? How big a piece do you think it was? Okay. About the size of an egg.
Yeah.
Was it cooked up pretty good or was it still semi-raw?
It was juicy. It didn't taste like blood, though. I mean, it tasted like a charbroiled piece of steak.
Similarly to how Scott was trying to convince the detectives of Lisa's burning passion for him, he also seems to be trying to convince them that what he did wasn't despicable or utterly insane, because she just tasted like steak.
Let me ask you this.
Did y'all hear that? Let me take a minute. Did y'all hear what he just said? She tasted like a piece of charbroiled steak. I fried up a piece of her leg. Wow. A piece of charbroiled steak, the size of an egg.
This before you cut her up or anytime during you cut her up, did you drink any of her blood or did you have to with her again?
No.
Okay. So basically what you done, you just got busy of trying to dispose of her. Did you take any other organs out? Just the heart? Okay.
If you really wasn't sure what she was dead, why didn't you call somebody to come up there and check on her?
Because something else is in control.
So in a way you wanted her to be dead?
I don't know what was going on in my head.
It's curious that Scott keeps mentioning how he wasn't in control of his actions while at the same time providing excruciating detail on exactly what.
I bet I taste like chicken or fish. I don't know about tasting like steak.
Those actions were, and at times, exactly why he did them. It's possible that he may be trying to set up a half-hearted attempt at an insanity defense throughout the interview, but isn't really sure how to go about it.
Has she made you mad or anything at night?
Not really. She just irritated me a little bit.
It's clear that detectives are trying to find some possible motive for this murder and the horrific acts that swiftly followed, as it seems unlikely that it was simply an accident. As it turns out, the next part may reveal a bit of what Scott's true motivation might be.
I know me and you talked about this last time, but I talked to you after Tales. Can't remember if you was telling me that you was reading books about serial killers or if it was the movies you was telling me about. Were you reading some books at one time?
I was just studying about them, just watching like biographies.
What's your favorite movie to watch as far as serial killers?
No, I was doing the biographies, the real
Reading them?
stories. And I'd look up on the internet.
Like Jeffrey Dahmer or
Yeah, my favorite one is Richard Ramirez.
Ramirez? Was he the one that
He was a
Atlanta?
Night Stalker.
Richard Ramirez, aka the Night Stalker, was an American serial killer who terrorized the Southern California region in the mid-'80s, killing at least 13 people and assaulting countless others. According to some articles on this case, Scott reportedly wrote on his Facebook page on the day of Ramirez's death, "R.I.P. Night Stalker. Wish I could have met you." However, this couldn't be verified.
The Night Stalker, that's right. John Wayne Gacy or
I've read about Gacy. I mean, I got on Bad Serial Killer Kick a few years back. And that's all I put on my Facebook was just videos, like, because I don't listen to exactly what you call mainstream music. And, I'd find videos of serial killers and, by different bands where they're playing and, this video footage of different killers. And I told her, I was like, I'm wanting to check into a psychiatric hospital. I'm just thinking about it too much.
This admission is very interesting, as it could suggest that Scott had in fact fantasized about committing the same types of depraved acts as the serial killers he had an admittedly unhealthy obsession with, which may explain why he was so quick to start destroying Lisa's body so soon after her supposedly accidental demise. Detectives seem to start thinking along the same lines, as their next few questions focus on the ideas presented by the idea Scott may have been acting out serial killer fantasies.
I guess things went sour before I could get to one. Marcus and Ben always kicks me out. I'll be there a day or 2 or 3.
you're fine, go home.
Yeah,
Is this the only person that you ever heard like that?
yes.
You ever tried doing anything else? Dogs, cats?
I'm
anything like
an
that?
animal lover.
I thought you had a dog up there at one time.
Yeah. I mean, I worked in a slaughterhouse, but
Where'd you work out? Champions?
worked there on and off for 6 years.
For Charlie and them out there?
Mm-hmm. We had a bad falling out.
So when you were having with her and she wanted you to start choking her out, what was your thoughts? What was going through your head then? Were you thinking, this is my opportunity, I'm just going to choke her out and live out one of my fantasies, or
Pretty much.
opportunity was a knocking, wasn't it?
Yeah. You know what? We was going to go to a different damn liquor store, too. And we was right there about to pull in. And she goes, wait. She goes, you can't go to Oak Canyon. You owe that woman money. I was like, no, I paid her off. So she just went all the way to Oak Liquor instead of stopping at Westmead.
Maybe it was fate. Who knows?
This last statement seems to be Detective Parton taking a weak stab at one of the principles of the Reed technique, perhaps presenting an alternative theory to get Scott to admit to more details because the alternative makes the crime sound not that bad. It's at this point that the interview deviates from Lisa's cold-blooded murder and takes a rambling turn into Scott's personal life, starting with the other failed relationships with women he's had in the past and the misdemeanor charge for possession of drug paraphernalia that was still pending at the time of the murder, none of which, of course, were ever his fault. It's interesting to note that he blames the paraphernalia charge entirely on the woman he was seeing at the time, saying,
Yeah, it's misdemeanor paraphernalia. And me and this girl hooked up on a blind date. She was from Winchester. I couldn't get her to leave. Somebody called the police or something and said that I was dealing drugs and all this. And I ain't no drug dealer.
He couldn't get her to leave. He couldn't get any of these women to leave. They all wanted to shack up with him. They didn't want to leave once they got there.
You know, I'm a user.
This seems to be a running theme in Scott's life, that he never does anything wrong, the bad things that happen to him are never his fault, and that he's so irresistible to crazy women, they all immediately want to live with him. The detectives offer no
You know, Scott, back in the day, I had that problem too.
comment on this, instead trying to steer Scott back to the matter of Lisa. And while Scott does answer their questions, it's now only between stories about himself, random details on his life, or any random thought that seems to cross his mind.
I know we'll read on here about serial killers and stuff like that. But you thinking about keeping any body parts at all?
It crossed my mind. And I thought about keeping their skull because I'm all the time messing with masks and Halloween decorations, stuff like that. And I was like,
For those of you keeping track, Scott is now referred to the victim as a slaughtered animal and is now comparing her to a Halloween decoration, further indicating how little regard he had for Lisa Hyder's life. Eventually, the exhausted detectives wrap up the nearly 3-hour interview by reading Scott's overwrought
This is true, truth. This is true. I ate stuff, but it wasn't their backstrap.
confession back to him, and he signs it. Gregory Scott Hale pleaded guilty to first-degree murder on January 15, 2015. And though on the surface this may seem as though he was finally taking responsibility for his actions, in recent years he claims he was charged and sentenced unjustly on the grounds of religious persecution, the religion in question implied to be Satanism. No concrete evidence that Gregory Scott Hale was a practicing theistic or atheistic Satanist, or were there any signs of satanic literature, paraphernalia, or religious symbolism found anywhere near the scene, aside from a crudely rendered Leviathan cross scribbled on a sheet of notebook paper on a dusty desk. Some point to one Leviathan cross as a sign that Scott was a practicing Satanist. However, on this same desk, in a place of equal prominence, there was a Star Trek fan collective Borg DVD. But few have pointed to this as evidence that he worshipped the Borg Queen. Scott never mentioned Satanism or any other alternative belief systems in his interview.
You know, Texas, that's what they said a while ago. They said backstrap on a deer is the best part of it's like a trophy meat, it's the best because there's no muscle around it, nothing. It's just really, really the best part of the deer. I've never had it.
While a handful of the news articles written after his arrest briefly bring up Satanism as a possible motive, it appears they're basing the assumption that Scott worshiped the devil on his love of metal music, the album covers of which adorn his Facebook page, and dark comedy. Scott also goes on to complain that all of the articles only include the bad things about him, allegedly writing, "Y'all only put up the bad. I've been told by a couple of people who really know me and who wrote positive things about me, or said positive things, and for some reason that never gets published. But people who don't really know me that speaks only diluted BS that is secondhand BS, and bad about me. Y'all want to smear that all over the paper." Regardless, the family of Lisa Marie Hyder can rest assured that the man who brutally murdered and dismembered this young mother of 6 will rot in prison for the rest of his life.
Dang, she had 6 kids? I didn't know that. Well, we're not done yet. I'm going to take you to his Facebook page. I'm going to check that out. Let me put this on full view. She had 6 kids? Wow. I've never had backstrap deer meat. I haven't. Let's check this out. There's his Facebook page. There's his picture. The last post was October 25th, 2015. He said, "Needing pen pals. Everyone wants to write. Write me, Henning, Tennessee, 38041, Odin. Do you have access in jail, brother?" And there's Scott. So any of you ladies want to write a killer, here's his stuff right here. Henning, Tennessee, 38041. Any of y'all find Scott attractive? Let's see. He went to Coffee County Central High, Manchester, Tennessee. This lady put, "Wow, Scott, you're a killer. I'm blocking you." Just when you think it can't get worse, it always can. It looks like you did post a lot of YouTube videos. See? I guess these were all songs off YouTube. The baddest skull and spike boots with bone heels. There's some of you ladies are into this stuff. I know some women that would wear the hell out of those boots. Any of y'all would y'all buy those boots? And there you go. You can find your porn name. Whatever day, whatever month you were born and whatever day you were born. So mine would be King Strapper. Wow. That is some crazy stuff on here. Y'all want to put your porn name in the chat? Maybe this is why I get called creepy. You think? Stuff like this. I guess he was a Star Wars kind of guy. And there's that one that they showed on the video, "Evil Keep Me Young." This one's what I thought was disturbing. Look at this. May 24th, 2014. So he killed that girl in July. And look what he posted. I don't always kill people, but when I do, I like to decorate my house with their severed heads. Is that like a precursor coming? Not so fast, 12. Sorry. King Dripper. Mine was King Strapper. I thought that was interesting when I saw this earlier. Don't you wish your boyfriend was a freak like me? God. A slut is fun in everyone's bed. A good girlfriend is only a slut in yours. Wow. KFC Witness Protection Program. What's APOC? Oh, post-apocalyptic warrior women. I was going to ask you what's post-APOC, but I just figured it out. That is just terrible right there. He said, I'm no doctor, but if anyone here is going to save this man's life, it's the girl on the right. God. Wow. And he posted that more than once. Any of y'all a fan of, yeah, this guy was he ate that girl that he killed. What that, something dead, Walking Dead? Is that what that show's called? Where that dude had that bat, Lucille? The Walking Dead, I think. Yeah, Walking Dead. I know some people that could like put this as their slogan right here. I don't go crazy, I am crazy. I just go normal from time to time. How to keep Jehovah's Witnesses from knocking. If Batman were a redneck. And here's another one. I took care of that thing for you. I'm not saying I hate you, but if you were on fire and had water, I would drink it. I've seen this costume before. Y'all think that's cool? There's some dark stuff on there. You and I wake up in a jail cell. 3 words. What do you say? Y'all put that in the chat. You and I wake up In a jail cell, 3 words. What do you say? Dang it. Goat crossing. God. There's some of the music, obviously, he was into. I've never heard of any of those bands, I can tell you that. Goat Whore. Never heard of them. Redneck pickup line. Did you fart? Could you blew me away? My love for you is like diarrhea. I can't hold it in. I got a 6-pack of beer and my new Hank Jr. CD. Baby, you're finer than a new set of snow tires. You're prettier than a beer truck pulling up in the driveway. Are your parents retarded? 'Cause you sure are special. You're not the best looking girl here, but beauty's only a light switch away. Your eyes are as blue as the window cleaner. Hey, baby, nice tooth. Want to come over to my trailer, drink some beer, and see my new Velvet Elvis painting? Wow. Remember when you rubbed my nose in it? Payback's a bitch. Tell you, this stuff is dark. I hug the people I hate so I know how big to dig the hole in my backyard. Do you think he was do you think he was a little dark? Or do you think he would just kind of get that art right there? This was in his house. Cause y'all remember the redheaded whatchamacallit? There's this TV coming out of the holder thing. So I guess he made this and stuffed it with like what looks like carpet and stuff. What y'all think about that? That one's for you, Truth. That one's for you, Truth. There's one of those pictures they showed in that video. Look at that picture for a minute while I try to find the video that I want to show you. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? Okay, I guess I'll show you this one. I guess we'll get off his Facebook page. Here's some more pictures. What do you think of Scott? Yeah, he's in prison. Wow. God. Look, Truth. Look familiar? There's that Night Stalker one. He was a pretty amazing fellow. I learned a lot from him. Y'all can look him up if you have Facebook. It's Skotthale. Thought I'd show you the Facebook page. I was watching it or looking at it earlier. I thought it was quite interesting. BK is not like this. Okay. It could be worse. You're right. Let's watch one more. Y'all good? Here we go.
22-year-old community college student Jasmine Pace had plans to spend Thanksgiving 2022 with her family. To her mother's surprise, she sent a text message last minute canceling those plans. On Jasmine's Facebook account, there was a new post. It read, "Enjoying Thanksgiving with my baby." Except the photo accompanying the post was not from Thanksgiving. In this photo, Jasmine's distinctive tattoos were missing. It had to have been taken months earlier. Concern turned to panic as her family realized the implications. No one knew where Jasmine was, and someone was online pretending to be her. Hi there, I'm Kevin, and welcome to Just Thought Lounge. Today's case is as gruesome as it is heartbreaking. It's one of those stories that stays with you long after it's over. There's a lot to digest here, so let's take a look. The night before Thanksgiving 2022, Jasmine Pace left her mother's home in Chattanooga, Tennessee at just before 11:30 p.m. She drove her white Chevy Equinox. The next day, Katrina Pace received a message from her daughter's phone. She planned to stay at the home of her friend Emma for the rest of the week, the text read. Jasmine had recently lost her grandmother to cancer, so when she opted out of the family gathering, it didn't immediately raise alarm bells. She had occasionally chosen to be out of contact for brief periods as she worked through her grief. That abruptly changed, however, following a new post on Jasmine's Facebook page. "Enjoying Thanksgiving with my baby," it read. At first, what struck Katrina about the post was the revealing outfit her daughter wore. It was not characteristic of Jasmine to post such a revealing photo of herself online. It was another aspect of the image that sparked waves of panic for Jasmine's father, Travis Pace. Jasmine's many tattoos formed a kind of timeline, each obtained on a different date, months apart. In this image, Jasmine's extensive tattoos on her upper right arm were missing. This post was not what it claimed to be. Katrina spoke with Jasmine's friend Emma and confirmed what she had already suspected by that time.
I'm going to turn this one off because I found the one that I really wanted to show you. This is a good one. I'll show it one day, but not today. I wanted to show this one. This is the one that I wanted to show you. This one's pretty... For all you ladies out there, I think I found you a man if you're single. There he is.
Burned by love, Brady Ostrike decided that he would look for a different kind of relationship. And online, he found just that. Unfortunately, for those who took their virtual interactions with him offline, Brady would no longer refrain from acting on his long-standing and deeply deranged desires. It was only after a police chase and car crash, when a black suitcase and his trunk unzipped, that Brady's many heinous crimes would come tumbling out. But most shockingly, one of the most incriminating pieces of evidence came from a security camera that Brady put up himself. Meet Brady. He may look like he's undertaking some normal home improvement work, but Brady's upgrade served a different purpose. As a professional electrician, Brady was more than capable of house maintenance. It wasn't, however, a repair that the 31-year-old was working on when his face was captured by one of the many cameras he had personally installed in his Wyoming, Michigan home. Instead, that camera, the one he put up, caught the image of Brady in the midst of an incriminating act. The first footage was recorded on July 5, 2014, of a casually dressed Brady wearing what appears to be a tank top and boxers. As he scratches himself, he appears to be thinking of how to approach his task. Then he gets to work, cleaning up what seems to be a rather untidy space. The area is cleared before our eyes with a kind of newly installed type of pulley system, something Brady brushes past. Then it's back to more scratching. Only this time, Brady is dressed and looks ready to head out. Just what Brady was readying
Brady's itchy.
those subterranean rooms for wouldn't be discovered until almost 2 weeks later. It was at that time when he would be described as pure evil from start to finish by the Wyoming police chief that the very cameras that had captured Brady's prep work would reveal the abhorrent purpose of his overhauling effort. Getting to know Brady isn't easy. Brady's was a sheltered childhood, with his mother homeschooling in between brief stints at small private schools. Established early in his life, therefore, was a social network that centered on the church. In fact, it would be through the church that Brady would meet women. Gaining an understanding of Brady's personality is even more difficult, as the dichotomy is clear. Despite plenty of documentation to the contrary, there are individuals who held positive opinions of him, and who continue to wrestle with the thought of Brady perpetrating his many appalling crimes. To his family members and close friends, Brady was extremely generous. The consensus is that he always longed for marriage and children.
See what I mean? You know, a lot of times we talk about serial killers or killers in general, and they're not always monsters on the outside. They can be very cunning, baffling, and powerful when it comes to deceiving many people around them. See, people had good things to say about Brady. And wait till you find out what Brady does. Brady is kind of sick.
To his co-workers and those who had the misfortune of crossing his cyber path, Brady was strange and sinister. Described as not a very clean guy and somewhat unkempt with an ever-present and pungent body odor. His roommates even reported that at some point Brady had taken to urinating in bottles he left all over the house. He caused unease, with one person admitting that Brady freaked him out, and another going so far as to describe him as having crazy eyes. If you were to ask his apprentice on the job, however, this standoffishness wasn't altogether a bad thing. This is because when Brady did open up to others, he described his inappropriate intimate experiences and detailed his perverse proclivities. Yet had there been any uncertainty as to Brady's inner nature, his brutality during 5 days in July of 2014 would put that doubt to rest. It was, in fact, within a single intimate relationship that Brady's intenseness was encapsulated. This romantic partnership would also set the stage for what would happen when Brady's severe nature was no longer restricted. It was in 2001 when 19-year-old Brady was attending the Montana Wilderness School of the Bible in Augusta, Montana, that he first met Tina. He was almost immediately all in, thus establishing a pattern in his personal relationships that would continue. Although Tina lived in Canada, Brady proposed marriage to Tina. And during their 7-year engagement, he and Tina seemed to beat the odds, namely the distance between them. Of course, ensuring that they remained connected required money, a lot of money, and it was Brady's money to be exact. It's unknown precisely how much Brady claimed to have paid for Tina's many trips to Michigan and the vacation spots they visited over the years, but the $30,000 diamond and sapphire engagement ring Brady presented to her might offer some indication of his investment, financial at least, in Tina and the life they would share. Not that Tina didn't cherish this item of jewelry. In fact, she liked it so much she allegedly refused to return it when she called off the engagement. This she'd done just a few weeks before the wedding, and after the invitations had already gone out. Following this, Brady claimed to anyone willing to listen that Tina had allegedly emptied his bank accounts and cleared out the 401k he'd given her access to. And Tina had done all this while he was at work. Although Tina would later claim that the breakup was mutual, saying that they, quote, wanted to end it before we were 5 years down the road and getting a divorce. Those close to
I think she got out while the getting was good, don't y'all?
Brady suggested otherwise. Tina dumped Brady, blindsiding him, they assert. What is almost certain is that everyone would, after the heinous events, agree with Tina's claim that apparently this last year, after the breakup, Brady had made some bad choices, which is certainly one way to put it. Brady had long been someone who seemed at risk of personal collapse, After chopping down a tree that had formerly blocked Brady's view of his neighbor's bedroom from his own, for instance, he'd become enraged when he believed the neighbor family was being too loud. Brady proceeded to shoot 2 rounds into the ground. Even on a more basic and less overtly confrontational level, he struggled with his social skills. His penchant for squeezing too hard when shaking hands had caused his roommate's father to warn that Brady was going to hurt someone the way he greeted people. In another incident, while hosting Bible study at his house, as Brady and his 2 roommates would host Bible study meetings, Brady had been showing a firearm he owned when he accidentally fired it. The bullet went through the kitchen wall and entered the hood of his roommate's car, which was parked outside. Brady had run outside and pushed the damaged car into the garage before turning off the house lights and hoping police didn't show up. And they didn't. It was instead a neighbor who'd heard the shot and approached Brady, and for at least the second time in his life, Brady was warned that he was going to hurt someone if he wasn't more careful, and it would soon come true. After word of Brady accidentally firing the gun inside the house in front of the children made the rounds, parents stopped sending their kids to Bible study with Brady. However, his roommates were even more freaked out because when they asked Brady what he would have done if he'd accidentally shot him or Nick, and law enforcement had shown up, Brady explained that he would have shot the other one and told law enforcement that he'd been forced to use his weapon on them when they had both gone crazy. These roommates soon became former roommates, understandably. His behavior following the end of the engagement established some disturbing notions that seemed to have emerged in Brady's mind. Brady spent much of his time online, with his roommates saying his free time was spent in front of the downstairs computer, and even his reality was augmented with role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons. Brady would also take part in LARPing, which is role-playing while physically portraying characters. Along with groups of children and adults, he was said to engage in mock battles and sword fights. He also had an affinity for truly terrible poetry and was obsessed with medieval weaponry, which was displayed prominently throughout his home. Brady was clearly a man for whom the make-believe meant much, and very little stretching of the imagination was required of him to render this virtual existence into reality. He slipped effortlessly into a fantasy life, but Brady's fall would be steep, and the fantasy world in which he landed was not one he could easily wrench himself from, had he
And this is where the turn begins.
even bothered to try. It was while at a bar one evening in the early summer of 2014 that Brady actually shared some of his dark inner thoughts. While inebriated, Brady spoke to the bar manager, who found the whole situation to be suspicious. That's because Brady wasn't just talking. In fact, he told the manager that he was acting out his warped thinking. According to Trey, the bar manager, Brady had walked into the premises close to 6 p.m. Then, over a beer, he'd started to talk about women. After explaining to Trey how Tina had left him and allegedly taken his money, Brady went on to say that all women are crazy. Brady couldn't understand why, according to Trey, they didn't want to be treated well. So what he had decided, thanks to a newfound clarity fueled by heartache and bitterness, was that he was done with women like Tina, who didn't want to be treated nicely. Brady had decided that he would seek out women who wanted to be mistreated. And just where would Brady find this type of woman? Why, Craigslist, of course. Between 2011 and 2014, the platform was receiving a lot of media attention for the adult services offered, and because several convicted murderers had used it to lure their victims. So when Brady confessed over a beer at Mulligan's bar how he was now only looking for women who wanted to be mistreated, he shared one additional disturbing detail. This item of interest was in fact so significant that it alone formed Trey's justification for calling the police after Brady left the venue. You see, Brady told him that he'd found a new woman already, and in fact, she just so happened to be locked up in his basement at that very moment. After Trey pulled Brady's information from his credit card, police made a welfare check at the Taft Avenue home where Brady lived. When they encountered Brady and advised him that someone at Mulligan's had overheard his conversation about a woman being imprisoned in his basement, Brady laughed and invited the officers inside. In the basement, he said they would be able to see for themselves that the young woman in question was safe. And when police officers were able to determine that the woman, by the name of Melissa, was of age and, in fact, unharmed, they thanked Brady for being so cooperative and left the house. But this wasn't the full story, and this wasn't the last time the police would see Melissa. Melissa also wouldn't be the last woman Brady met on Craigslist. She would, however, be the last one to survive. Their relationship started off somewhat rocky, with Melissa in a suitcase in the backseat of his car. Melissa had recently moved back home to Michigan after living in New York for some time. Looking to meet people and perhaps find a friends with benefits type relationship, Melissa had placed an...
You know, I can't lie. When I heard this earlier, Melissa, I remembered you said you lived in the New York area. I was like, oh my God. No cap. Really. I was like, oh my God. I'm thankful it wasn't you.
ad in Craigslist. Within the hour, Brady responded. It didn't take long for them to move their conversation off Craigslist. Melissa would tell Brady that she was living with friends in the nearby city of Coldwater. He offered for Melissa to move in with him. He also suggested that he would be able to come and pick her up personally from Coldwater. Before leaving to get her in mid-May, Brady had asked Melissa if it would be okay with her to travel back to Wyoming in a suitcase. Assuming that this was a fetish of some sort, Melissa had agreed. Although she considered the request somewhat strange, which is perhaps the understatement of the century, when Brady had shown up with a black suit.
Okay. I gotta pause it there for a second. How many of you are open to this suitcase type of fetish? I mean, come on. Hey, baby, will you get in a suitcase for me? I'll put you in a suitcase, put you in the trunk. We'll drive across the country. I mean, is that a thing? Like a suitcase fetish? Like, will you please get in the suitcase? If you can't fit, I'll chop you up and put you in the suitcase. I mean, there's a lot of suitcase things being done. Like this one and the one that I was going to show you earlier before this one is a suitcase killing. So this is going to be another one. And plus we have what was that lady's name? Boone that did her husband. Yeah. Sarah Boone. Yeah. I was like, oh my God. I couldn't fit in that suitcase either. I could not fit in that suitcase either, Texas.
Case, she freely climbed inside. After being placed in the backseat of Brady's yellow Chevy Cobalt, the two had traveled for approximately 2 hours until, without warning, Brady stopped the car and unzipped the suitcase, only to spray an unknown substance into it and all over Melissa. When she came to, Melissa was still inside the suitcase, which was now located in Brady's garage. What happened next to a still groggy Melissa remained somewhat blurry, thanks to the unknown substance sprayed on her, which Melissa would later believe to be computer cleaner. After presenting her with a slave contract, the terms and conditions, Melissa agreed, and Brady proceeded to walk her around the house. When they entered the basement, where there were 2 small rooms on the left side of the stairs, joined by the bathroom with the furnace room on the right, things took a turn for the worse. Brady suddenly holding a gun to Melissa's head while locking a heavy metal chain around her neck. During the next 8 or so weeks, the multiple brutal assaults on Melissa would be interrupted only by Brady's rotating work schedule, which allowed for the house cleaning contingency and the master-slave contract to be fulfilled. Scattered throughout her time in the torture chamber were outside visits. Melissa had even gone to the Golden Corral and met Brady's parents, and Brady had announced to co-workers that he was going to marry Melissa after knowing her for mere...
Okay, baby, I'm going to untie you. I'm going to ungag you and quit beating you. You're going to go to Golden Corral with me and meet my parents. Act normal, okay? Wink, wink.
...for weeks. Their relationship is murky at best, with moments where Melissa consented to certain aspects, such as the night the bartender called the police after talking to Brady. At that time, when police found her in Brady's basement, they determined that she was unharmed and currently consenting, but that wouldn't remain the case for long. Although Melissa attributed much of Brady's behavior to their agreement, the violence was very much real. So too were the nights Melissa spent asleep in the dog cage, as was Brady's ultimate fantasy of using the taser on her. Although she never watched any of the footage, Melissa also believed the cameras to be constantly recording. In the early afternoon of June 19, 2014, however, reality would come knocking at Brady.
Ain't nobody putting me in a dog kennel. Ain't nobody putting me in a suitcase. You ain't spraying computer cleaner on me. You ain't gonna tase me. You ain't gonna do any of that stuff. Like, come on, man. No.
Brady's Taft Avenue residence. He wouldn't be home to hear it, as Melissa had waited for him to leave for work before she called the ambulance. She would be taken to the Metro Hospital ER, and it was there that the Wyoming police officer would discuss with her what had transpired with Brady. According to Melissa, on the morning before she called for an ambulance, Brady had discovered that she'd been in contact with her ex-boyfriend. Upon this discovery, Brady had twisted her nose and punched her in the face, splitting her lip. When the officer asked if such an incident had ever happened before, Melissa shared that the assault wasn't Brady's first. Several days earlier, Brady had read her text messages and come across one that mentioned leaving him. Brady's immediate threat to Melissa after a brutal beating was that he would chain her up in the basement. 4 days after she broke free from the basement for a safe house, Brady reported Melissa to the police for allegedly stealing his property while he was at work. Like Tina, and according to Brady, Melissa had robbed him, and she also apparently left him while he was at work. Melissa, on the other hand, reported the assault, but requested that no criminal charges were filed against Brady, for reasons that aren't entirely clear. If that horrified you, Brady was really only getting started. On July 12th, less than a month after Melissa escaped, Brady once again turned to Craigslist, where he found the following post. I need $50 by 3:30 p.m. today. I can pay you back later tonight, but I need gas and some mess quick. Everyone has bronchitis at my house, and I don't want to get sick. I'm 8 months pregnant, and my lungs are all squished as is. If you could help me out, me and my daughter will greatly appreciate it. Well, we're looking for donations if possible. Kinda in a tight spot, and we have a baby on the way. As far as the fund goes, there won't be any mail-on-mail action or redacted on me unless it's my boyfriend. Condoms are necessary, and I'm 18. He's 25. I recently dyed my hair, so it's not black or brown anymore. Brady responded, and an exchange began. I can swing $120. Wow, really? Can you host? I can host. What are you thinking? I'm 25. Yes, you both need a ride. Where you want me to pick you up at? No, we can travel, just can't host is all. Where would you like to meet up? I'd like to redact it outside in a park around 11:30. That okay? Can you? Can you make it? I don't know. I don't want to get in trouble for indecent exposure or anything. I can't go to jail being 8 months pregnant. It's cop-free. It's a park, but behind it are a lot of woods. No cops at all. Not my first time there. I can redacted you as you redacted your boyfriend. Okay, do we need to bring the condoms? No, I've got a rubber for me. Go in past the baseball diamonds to the grass lot in the back. Follow the trail to the right till you get to the meadow. I have a dry blanket for us 3. Okay, I guess we can. Sorry for the late reply. We had to talk about it and your messages kept getting sent to the spam box. What time? Midnight. Sounds great. If I give an extra 40, can I bareback? Okay, will do. Thanks for the donation. We may be
Okay, call me naive or call me whatever you want, but what is bareback?
tad bit late because the boyfriend is stinking up the bathroom at the moment. When he gets out, we'll be on our way. In an exclusive interview with EWU, 18-year-old Brooke Ann Slocum was described by her mother, Deb Hotchkiss.
She was the sweetest girl ever. She would help anybody out, anybody. She would help them out. She loved her family. She was a beautiful soul, beautiful soul. She just got tied up in something evil.
Brooke Slocum was known to show kindness toward others in difficult situations. Bothered by the homelessness plaguing Grand Rapids, Brooke, who herself didn't have a fixed address, would hold up a sign asking for aid, only to turn over the cash to someone else so that they could get off the street for a night. Brooke was already slim and worried about her next meal, yet she would pack lunches for the hungry. A natural nurturer, Brooke wanted nothing more than to find love and make a family of her own. She was 8 months pregnant in July of 2014, carrying a very wanted little girl who she planned to name Audie. It is, however, difficult to determine whether Brooke believed that what she was experiencing with her boyfriend, Charlie Oppenheer, was in fact love. From the outside, it certainly doesn't appear to have been the case. Deb recalls meeting Charlie and her feelings about the relationship between him and her daughter.
The first time I met him, I was very uneasy. Didn't have very good feelings. A lot of times I would call her. She wouldn't call me back. He was controlling of her, and he always had to be with her when she came to visit me. So at that point, I knew it was not a healthy relationship.
25-year-old Charlie and 18-year-old Brooke's relationship was turbulent. While Charlie was the father of baby Audie, he already had 2 children and an on and off relationship with their mother, Rose. During the times when he wasn't living with Brooke, and even while Brooke was trying to win him back, Charlie had continued to be intimate with Rose. After a year and a half of Brooke being with Charlie, meaning they'd gotten together when Brooke was still a minor, Charlie discovered that Brooke was pregnant.
She wanted Audie so bad, so bad. She needed her in her life.
He'd reportedly told Rose that he planned to end the relationship with Brooke. But apparently feeling sorry for Brooke, Rose had allowed her and Charlie, whom she'd twice previously filed domestic violence charges against, to move into her house. A pregnant Brooke and Charlie were now living with Charlie's ex-partner and the mother of his 2 young children in her home. The sleeping arrangement? Brooke was on the couch, while Charlie slept in the bed with Rose.
I cannot. I don't know how these things happen. There's no way that anybody I know would consent to this at all. At all. And I'm not trying to be a prude, or I'm not trying to say anything about anybody else, but I don't know anybody that would consent to this. Would y'all consent, ladies?
Eventually, though, Brooke would be kicked out, with Charlie following shortly thereafter. In July of 2014, Charlie's life was perhaps on the upswing. He was back working after being furloughed for a lengthy period, and by all accounts was doing well on the job. He'd even recently purchased a new to him, dark green 1995 Saab. It was, in fact, contact from police about the Saab that had alerted his father, Gerard Jerry Charles Oppenheer, to the fact that something was amiss with his son. When he received a phone call from an officer on July 13, 2014, to ask him if a green Saab found at the Gazan water tower was registered to Charlie, Jerry had tried to reach his son. Always prompt to respond via phone or text, this time Charlie neither called nor texted his father in return. Another 3 days passed. Charlie was still radio silent, and despite being checked on several times by authorities, the Saab hadn't left its grassy parking spot in Gazan Park. That was when Jerry walked into the Wyoming Police Department to report his son missing. Unbeknownst to Jerry, while at the police station's desk window, detectives in the back were being called out to Gazan Park. A body had just been found near the trailhead. The officer who was back at the park to check again on the seemingly abandoned Saab had walked the trail and noticed a used condom wrapper, and several smoked cigarettes. There was also a pool of blood resting atop a mud puddle. A discarded and upside-down brown flip-flop was located nearby. Concealed underneath some dead tree limbs was Charlie's body. There was an unnatural appearance to the positioning of the sticks, rendered only more macabre for officers on the scene by the human arms sticking out. As if attempting to escape from the makeshift funeral pyre, flies were collecting near the puddle. The faint odor of decay hung in the still, humid air. Yet Jerry wouldn't be told that his son had been located. Charlie's identity first needed to be confirmed, and this was going to be more difficult without a head, as Charlie had been decapitated and his head was missing. Also missing, 8 months pregnant Brooke.
The cops came to my house and told me she was missing.
Okay.
It took them 3 days to contact me after Charles was murdered. But they came to my house, and my other daughter was here, and she called me and she told me Brooke was missing. So I flew home from work, and they told me where Charlie was at when he was murdered. And me and my husband and a few friends flew to Grand Rapids and started searching the woods. The police told me that there was no need for us to go there. They already combed the area. But as a mom, you got to double check. And hopefully you could find something. But we did not end up finding her there.
In the very early hours of July 13th, 2014, hours after Brady O'Strike had made an arrangement to meet someone on Craigslist at midnight, an on-duty officer pulled into a mobile gas station. While there, he'd observed a white SUV driving past.
I don't think they have Craigslist anymore. I don't know.
But then noticed that the vehicle circled around and stopped across from him. When the occupants reached the officer, they informed him of a suspicious situation that had occurred at the park. While parked and sitting in the back seat, the teen's attention was drawn to a man in a white mask peering into the vehicle. They were so scared of this masked stranger, in fact, that the driver jumped into the front seat and sped away. The last thing he remembered seeing was the murky figure heading toward a dark car parked in the back of the lot. By the time Charlie's father reported his son missing, police had already started checking local hotels for him and Brooke, but that same day, Charlie's decapitated body was located. It was information gleaned from phone and computer records that led to the emergence of Brady O'Strike as a suspect. Officers soon began conducting surveillance on Brady's house, and since they weren't entirely sure if he was involved in Charlie's death or Brooke's disappearance, they waited for him or his Chevy Cobalt to move. But they didn't have to wait long. In the evening of July 16th, just after police started watching the house, they witnessed Brady backing the car out of the driveway. Officers followed him, and a high-risk traffic stop was conducted, and Brady was pulled over. Though he initially responded to officers' verbal instructions, at one point Brady started to reach over to the passenger seat. Despite being ordered to halt this movement, he slammed his door shut and barreled away. A brief chase ensued, but when Brady approached 131 to turn north, he appeared to lose control of his vehicle and crashed head-on into the guardrail. An even more brief standoff took place. Then, a gunshot resounded. During the siege, several officers left the scene of the crash and proceeded to start what would become a multi-day search of Brady's home. The items located inside the house were not much different than those found in the badly damaged car, which was being combed through while Brady's body lay beside it, underneath a yellow covering, only his boots visible. Multiple tasers, knives, ammunition, plastic tarp, and a collapsible shovel were, perhaps unsurprisingly, found inside the Cobalt. Also located, which
So would y'all say that was a kill kit?
perhaps solved at least one mystery, was a white mask, the same one Brady wore when he first approached and frightened the teenagers, and then headed over to Charlie Oppenier's green Saab. When officers opened the trunk right there on the moonlit road, they were greeted with the sight of a black suitcase. Inside that suitcase was the body of an unclothed Brooke, in the fetal position as if to protect her precious Audie. Though it was, of course, too late. Brooke's cause of death was ligature strangulation. A baby pink blanket was used to cover Brooke and her deceased daughter in the suitcase. But it was the footage found on the cameras located throughout Brady's basement that truly disturbed officers. Although the video recordings would answer the almost unspeakable question of just what had happened to Brooke during the intervening days from when Charlie's body was found to when hers was discovered in Brady's trunk, the answer would be more horrifying than anyone could have predicted. As a mother knows, Deb was aware that what would come out in a trial would only devastate her further. And as a grandmother-to-be who had a nursery prepared and waiting for the imminent arrival of baby Audie, that's saying a lot.
10:30, 11. It was at nighttime that the cops came and told me that she had died. And I asked them if my granddaughter was alive, and they said no.
Making abundant use of the torture setup he'd casually prepared, Brady assaulted and...
You know, one thing for certain, I know that I keep stopping it, but I have to, otherwise I'll get copyrighted. But one thing for certain, you're not putting my ass in a dog kennel. I will not fit in a dog kennel. I cannot even think, like, this guy was vicious, man. This guy was vicious. Wait till you hear what he did to this girl. He obviously put her in a suitcase, right? But wait till they tell you how she was found.
tortured Brooke multiple times over the 5 days he held her prisoner. He forced her to smoke marijuana and put a chain around her neck. Her arms were attached to the pulley system that Brady was seen installing in earlier footage. Despite there being no sound in the footage captured by Brady's own cameras, communicate her distress. The tears shed were silent yet resonant. Brady later strangled her to death. As Charlie's skull was found in March of 2019 on a remote farm about 30 minutes north of Gazan Park, confirming his cause of death to be from a gunshot to the head, there remained just one baffling element to the entire sickening affair. The search warrant on Brady's house was literally being executed as his body arrived at the morgue. Detectives found many, and we do mean many, items of evidence. Listed are handguns and rifles, knives and swords, a machete, throwing knives, one long-handled hatchet. There are whips and chains, ropes and handcuffs, a taser, metal collars and restraints, even a shock prod. Add to these the assorted adult toys and condoms and unmarked bottles of pills found scattered throughout the basement, a human molar, Velcro skull mask, black Hannibal mask, and a dirty baby doll with a fixed noose. Women's lingerie, clothing, and jewelry. Also located was a map affixed to a basement wall. The U.S. map, if possible, dwarfed even the most obscure and bizarre items taken into evidence. On the map, all over it in fact, were different colored pushpins clearly intended to denote something. With Brady no longer able to offer any insight as to the apparently single, clean, and organized item in the home, it would be Melissa, his survivor, who would provide detectives with the answer Brady had given her. The pins, according to Brady, represented locations where he'd stashed food and weapons in advance of the apocalypse. Why this kind of planning and kits were necessary is likely to never be known. When his former fiancée Tina spoke publicly to say that she was shocked. The guy I know and the guy who did this are two different people. She claims she wants to remember Brady as the man she knew and not the monster he apparently became, saying, quote, "He was my teddy bear. He had mood swings, but who doesn't?" We wanted Deb, Brooke's mom, to have the last word on this tragic case.
I was glad that he took himself out, because I don't know if I would have been able to sit in a courtroom. I seen enough pictures through the cops, through the information that they had, that it was just sickening. I got so much support from my community, from Saranac, from all over the state of Michigan, from all over the United States, and even across the world. I had people texting me, messaging me, sending me cards in the mail. It was just overwhelming, but a blessing at the same time. And every now and then, somebody will send me a letter or a card in the mail. Overwhelmed, I'm blessed, I'm grateful that they still think about Brooke and think about me, even though it was so very tragic ending. There are a lot of good people in this world, and there's a lot of bad people in this world.
As a parting question for Deb, we asked her how she keeps Brooke and Audie's memory with her.
They're in my house. They're in my heart. I talk about them a lot to my family and friends. I keep her still going in my life.
We want to extend the utmost gratitude to Deb for speaking with us.
Wow. Yeah, I agree with you, Truth. I'm sure he probably had something to do with that baby as well. Well, there's two cases. I really enjoy that channel. It's called EWU Crime Storytime, or just EWU. If you haven't checked out that channel, you might go check it out, give some likes and subscriptions. I like that dude's voice. You know, he's very good at narrating that. Some sick stories right there. And you know, sometimes we think that the cases that we're talking about right now are bad. Some of these cases that I've been researching and watching and all this stuff, boy, the one that I was going to show you before this is just as sick or worse. I mean, it makes you wonder about that scale of evil, you know. I'm trying to think back on the numbers. I mean, I'm going to start reading that book again. Hopefully I can remember much of the stuff that I was reading on it. Yeah, Rondi, there are so many freaking cases. Interrogation videos. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out as well. I mean, the body cam videos, I've seen those as well. Yeah, so I'll probably do some more of these if y'all enjoyed it. I enjoy it. I mean, I don't really get so deep into it that it disturbs me. I mean, because like I've shared with you guys, you know, I've seen a lot of bad things in my life as well. So some of this stuff is really the part about being, you know, chained up and put in a dog kennel or, you know, put in a suitcase, that just overboard for me. I mean, it's just overboard. He's bad, and I think they let him out last year. I'm not turned on, but I'm awake now. Thank you. Makes you wonder what all is lurking out there. That's true, Texas. That is so true, man. I mean, and some of these cases, some of them haven't even been solved. So that's really interesting. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. This is my first live in a while. Tomorrow at the full moon, or this morning, in the morning, going to be the full moon. Y'all remember to stay hydrated. Take your meds if you got them. We're on a 3-day cycle after tomorrow. So mania will overcome you if you have a chemical imbalance. Usually when the tide goes back out, you become manic. So beware of that. Sometimes it's best just to stay to yourself and kind of keep yourself grounded when all that occurs. Because sometimes we can get on here and we can do things or say things that, you know, are hurtful. I know I've done it. We've seen a lot, but nothing in comparison, brother. You're right. You're right, bro. You're right. Well, y'all have a good night. You know, it's about that time for the maestro to cue that music. Thank you so much for spending your evening with me. I hope that y'all have a good night. Keep yourself safe from whatever it is that you need to keep yourself safe from. Cherish your freedom and cherish your life, because once you lose either one, it's hard to get them back. We'll catch you soon. Bye for now.